Well, this drawing of an urn in the grounds of the Palace of Versailles took me 10 minutes. So this series really has become 5 to 10 minute drawing improvement exercises. But I think in reality, 5 minutes is extremely short to try and draw anything at all. So with this urn, I was hoping to capture the fullness of the roundness of it. It really is almost like a slightly more than half sphere, the main part of the body, and then to come in with this stand. Now I've made the stand too large, I think, in proportion to the actual body of the urn, itself. However, there's not much I can do about that now. So in these quick sketches, it is important to move on when things such as proportions aren't quite right. This is how we learn simply to focus on that next time we do a similar sort of subject. So I'm resisting the urge to do surface decoration yet. I want to get the shape of the urn in place, trying to keep it symmetrical. It is a bit difficult when there is this tight time frame because there isn't as much opportunity to stop and look. There is a bit of a need for commitment first, but that has other advantages as well. So trying to get this major decoration of these medallions with portraits on them. And then what I thought was always going to be the trickiest part, this lion, I think it is, themed handle. So I spend a disproportionate amount of time trying to do a not particularly convincing imitation lion on the handle. All the time frustrated that I didn't feel I quite had enough time to observe properly before I really had to start drawing. But possibly for a quick gestural drawing, I've just gone into too much detail now with this lion's head. That's the other choice we have to make, just what level of simplification we're going to make when we do these quick gestural drawings. So looking at this now, I'm not quite hugely happy with the proportions of the urn. I feel like I don't have the components as tightly in proportion to each other as I would have liked. But again, I'm looking at quick line work, less observation than I would normally commit to, and capturing something of the feel. The benefit of quick drawings is not exactness, but it's confidence in line work, it's learning to be expressive in how we draw, and it's also being alerted to what some of our natural errors are going to be so that we can focus on those more carefully when we do our more considered drawings. So I decided I needed to get a bit of shadow onto this urn to give it a greater sense of 3 dimensions. And now there is this decorative banding on the base of the urn. And again, I don't quite bring these curves around deep enough at the base, but I'll forgive myself for that. A bit of decoration is good because it is now helping to disguise the fact that some of the proportions aren't as good as I'd like them to be. But that's another reason not to rush to put the decorations on shapes such as this when we're still actually forming the shape, the overall outline, because it can stop us seeing the overall proportions of what we're creating as clearly as we can if the surfaces are not distracting with their decoration. So there's just these acanthus leaves curling down on this base of our urn, and then just a few more decorations, and it's done. This photo, of course, will be on my channel community page if you'd like to have a go doing a quick 5 to 10 minute sketch of this urn in the gardens of the Palace of Versailles. It's a great subject. It would be a great subject for a longer drawing as well. Why not do a 5 to 10 minute sketch as, if you like, a preparatory warm-up, and then a more considered 20-30 minute drawing? I suspect that the first quick sketch would bear much fruit in your second drawing. How's that? For the second drawing, I chose a small rooftop tower in Zurich, and I thought just focusing on this cupola on the top would make a nice 5-minute exercise. Well, this took me 8 minutes to do, and if I'm honest, this is actually my third attempt. This is not a straightforward subject, well, certainly not one that I found. So if you managed to do better than I did in the time it took me, well, good on you. I'm trying to just keep the proportions correct at this stage, because in my earlier 2 attempts, keeping the proportions correct was a bit of a problem. So I'm looking at these really as shapes rather than form at the moment, because with considering the form, I found I was going too large. And there was also more time needed just to get these angles correct, because if they weren't correct, they really threw out the overall shape, and then it was just impossible to get the lines of the roof coming down to the right places. So I suppose what I learned from this is that doing details such as this, we probably do need to slow down and spend quite a bit of time just positioning our marks carefully. Because it is a symmetrical shape, but it is quite complex with convex and concave lines, it is important that we line things up carefully. And I think that in the end was the biggest problem I had, not being able to position my pen carefully enough before I started drawing the lines with the time pressure I'd put on myself. So for me, this would be an interesting subject to draw without any time limit and to see how it went. But at this point now, I'm trying to still take a little more time than I did on the earlier 2. And I'm also learning from the mistakes I made in those earlier 2. So I'm making a better effort of it. I'm sure some of you are thinking, nice to see the first 2 attempts, how they turned out. Well, one of them's on the back of this one, so that's a bit hard to show you at the same time. But I know some of you get tremendously encouraged seeing my drawings when they don't quite work out, so I thought I'd include this anyway, despite the fact that even this third take is not my finest work. It is something of the journey of being an artist. And I do think this is a really good subject to draw. It may not be the most straightforward thing if you're just beginning, even though it looks relatively simple. But it certainly is an incredibly good exercise on careful observation and getting lines in the right place. Now, it's this little bit on top which I think ends up being the most challenging of all. And I kind of mess up the left-hand side, and at the end, I was a bit annoyed that the sun was in the wrong place. If it had been on the other side, then I could have put some shadow lines where I just had way too many lines. And this has ended up being rather heavy-handed on the top because I kept trying to position my lines better. So now I'm thinking, well, maybe a bit of hatching is going to help. So from my 8 minutes, you could probably take off a minute, 90 seconds for this hatching. I had originally thought that I'd do a little more of the base, but after the first drawing, I realized there was no way I was going to do that in this time. So a beautiful little architectural structure, but not so easy to draw, particularly with a time limit imposed. But I think a little bit of hatching, just to provide more things to look at, did help the appearance a little bit. But why don't you have a go and see how you go with this? And if at first you don't succeed, g'day, I'm Stephen Travers. These 5-10 minute drawings I'm finding really helpful and really just quite interesting as well, the range of subjects. So I hope you're having a go with all of them. But look, whatever you draw and however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.